back to Leading Entrepreneurs of the World 2022 conference. We are now joined by Erik Huberman. He is the founder and CEO of Hawke Media, and he is going to talk to us about, no surprise, the Hawke Method. Erik, welcome.
Yeah,
you're joining us from London today, so we really appreciate your participation here in the conference, and we look forward to your presentation.
Yep, just landed, and let me pull that up for you guys. To give a little background on me and where this is coming from, personal backgrounds in e-commerce. I've built and sold a couple e-commerce companies like 11 and 9 years ago. And then, so I was early in the subscription e-commerce space. So I started advising and consulting for a bunch of brands on how to drive revenue growth using marketing. And I kept running into the same challenge. And I was working with big companies like Red Bull, Verizon, Hewlett Packard, as well as a lot of startups. And it seems that 99% of marketers out there have no idea what they're doing. And the few that are any good get really expensive, want long contracts. I'm talking about a lot of the agencies as well. And so I just got sick of the ecosystem and wanted to create an environment where great marketing could be accessible. And so I started with a small SWAT team of expert marketers, each with their own expertise. So like a Facebook marketer, an email marketer, a web designer, a fractional CMO. And I went back to these companies and said, everything's a la carte, month to month, cheaper than hiring in-house. The idea is we can spin up what you need, when you need it, and then ebb and flow and change as your needs change, because companies' needs change. And that's how we started. And now fast forward, we're about 300 full-time people. We manage marketing currently for about 600 brands. We've worked with about 4,000 over the past 8.5 years. We have a $50 million venture fund where we focus on investing in the marketing tech that we use to power our brands. And so we built out this whole ecosystem. And so with that, over almost a decade now of analyzing tens of thousands of companies' marketing and figuring out what works, what doesn't, we developed a methodology on how to basically triage and assess marketing and how to monitor it on an ongoing basis, and just an overview of a marketing strategy that helps CEOs, heads of marketing really assess, again, where the low-hanging fruit is, where they can attack. And so that is called the Hawke Method. And with that, so the Hawke Method, we actually published this book in March. It's already a bestseller. We've sold about a little over 30,000 copies was the last number I got. The Hawke Media itself has been valued at over $150 million. And I'm going to go into basically an overview of the Hawke Method so that hopefully this will help you guys really think through your marketing strategy. So the Hawke Method breaks down into 3 principles or 3 pillars: awareness, nurturing, and trust. And think of this as a tripod. You need all 3 of these. It's not about like, oh, well, I'm doing really well on awareness and let's just focus on that. Like, you have to have all of these for all to function. It's codependent. So awareness, nurturing, and trust. I'm going to get into the details on each of these. So awareness. Awareness is what most people think of as marketing. It's the way you introduce someone to your product or service, a potential customer. And so it's things like advertising, it's word of mouth, it's PR, it's influencer marketing, it's all these different things that you do to fill that top of the funnel. And what's important to understand with awareness is you could be doing a great job on converting customers, but if you're not increasing your awareness constantly, you're going to shrink. And why that is pretty simple. And I always like to try to simplify the rational explanation for all this. So you have your existing pool of customers and people that know about you. The issue is you will, by nature, churn customers. You will not keep 100% of your customers. And for simple reasons, like if you want to argue, like they're going to find other people that serve their specific need better. They're going to get distracted. They're going to have financial changes. And the biggest one, we all die at some point. You're going to lose customers at some point. Like, I hate to be morbid, but it's like, I want to highlight the fact that like, you cannot just hang on to your existing customer base and have a growing business or even a sustainable business. You're going to decline. So you have to constantly be building new awareness for your product or service and getting your name out there in order to even maintain, let alone grow. And so that's really important. And so when you're thinking about awareness, the biggest thing is to think about how are you going to do that? What are the efficient ways that you can get your name out there in a way that actually drives people to be customers? And the way I like to talk about this is the easiest comparison, because they're still the 2 powerhouses in advertising right now, are Google and Facebook and how they differ. So when you're thinking about what to pick to advertise, stop thinking about where is my demographic. That's something that I would say is about a decade outdated at this point, and I still hear it all the time. You can reach your demographic everywhere. People will say things like, oh, well, Gen Z doesn't use Facebook. It's like I don't know the actual number, but there's hundreds of millions of Gen Z on Facebook. Like it's not that is it the popular go-to? No, but there are plenty of Gen Zers on Facebook. So these hyperbolic statements of, oh, that generation isn't using that platform doesn't really apply to these bigger platforms. So what it's about is the context in which they're receiving the advertisement. What I mean by that is how people use the platform. So Facebook, as an example, and Instagram, I bucket them in together. They're obviously the same company too. So Facebook and Instagram, people use them when they're bored to scroll through a news feed. They are doing nothing productive. So you have someone that's basically telling you by the nature that they're on the platform, I have nothing better to do. And so that's one of the reasons it is so powerful, because you can now target the exact type of person that has a high propensity to be interested in your product, their psychographic data, their socioeconomic data, their geographic data, their demographic data, everything. You can target the exact person that has a high propensity to buy with copy and creative advertisements that you're able to test very iteratively so that you can really hone in on what's the best effective messaging for that audience at a time when they're telling you, I have nothing better to do, show me something interesting. So that combination between those three things makes it hyper compelling and is why it's been such a lucrative advertising channel. But you can't get timing on it. If I am a product that has to know that you have a current problem to serve you, Facebook is not a great platform. The example I'll give is if you're a DUI attorney and you need to serve people that just got a DUI. On Facebook, about the best you can do is target someone that likes Jack Daniels and Mercedes or something. Not necessarily a great indicator, but might as well give it a shot. On Google, I can just look for anyone searching for DUI attorney or DUI legal help, DUI, et cetera. And now I'm getting someone that's basically saying, raising their hand saying, I need you right now, and I can get in front of them. So Google is all about answering an existing need or demand, whereas Facebook's about creating new demand. So Facebook works really well for things that you are impulse buys that you can create demand for that someone didn't even know they needed or wanted. Whereas Google is better at answering when people have an existing demand. Where Google fails, though, is more of the lifestyle side. And I like to do this when I'm in person at conferences, but do a show of hands. Who here has ever Googled the word t-shirt and bought a t-shirt? I don't mean Googled red t-shirt with Cookie Monster on it. I mean literally Google the word t-shirt, because the amount of fashion brands that literally try to go for these blanket, generic categories like t-shirt or dress is insane. And nobody's on Google shopping like that. If you need something specific, you go on Google. If you want something general, Facebook is a better impulse buy driver. To talk about some of the other ones, you have TikTok, which I think is going to be the one that actually ends up challenging these, because the difference is TikTok has a similar use case where you're bored and you're just scrolling through. But the difference between TikTok and Facebook is Facebook's based on your social graph and Instagram, who you like, who you follow, who you're friends with. That's what you see in your newsfeed. So when an ad comes up, it's a little interruptive still. And you're bored, so you're willing to look at it. TikTok, it doesn't really matter who you follow. They show you videos of things they think you like based on where you pause. So it's a lot more algorithmic around your interest graph instead of your social graph. What that means is you're more used to seeing strangers on your TikTok feed than you are on your Instagram feed, which means when an ad pops up, as long as the creative is done very seamlessly to fit TikTok, you can get a lot of attention. And so I think TikTok is going, as they build their algorithm and their ad platform out better, it's going to be very powerful. Twitter, obviously in the news, no surprise that they're never done that well because the advertising platform on Twitter is not very compelling. How people use Twitter is talking back and forth and looking at specific people's tweet threads generally. They're not just scrolling through their feed bored. So it's a more lean forward kind of usage, which means when you show an ad, you're in my way. I'm doing something. Same thing with YouTube. When you do pre-roll, I'm trying to watch this video. Go away. YouTube's really good. If you use YouTube when you actually are native to the video, meaning you partner with influencers on YouTube, that can be powerful. But pre-roll on YouTube is not that great of a performance generally. And again, I'm speaking in generalities. There's exceptions to all these rules. And then Snapchat, similarly, it's still a little bit of messaging back and forth. Stories have worked out okay. So it's an okay advertising platform, but you don't need to spend, unless you're spending tons of money on these other ones and saturating, a lot of times it doesn't make sense to really expand into these just yet. So again, context is that's what this is all about. To get into the next piece, nurturing. This is critical. This is the most important part. Like if you have one takeaway from here, listen to this. Nurturing is the period between when someone sees an ad and when they actually purchase, or when they first are introduced to your brand and when they actually purchase, and then post-purchase to bring them back. Why that's so critical is that statement inherently implies that someone doesn't just see an ad and buy right away. So many people, that's logic. Hopefully everyone listening goes, yeah, of course, you don't see an ad and buy right away. But think about how you look at your marketing, because most people manage their marketing on ROAS, return on ad spend, and they look at it at a daily, weekly basis, sometimes monthly. Well, here's the problem. The average purchase cycle in e-commerce is somewhere between 3 weeks and 3 months, depending on the price point and the product. That means that if you're looking at your weekly ROAS performance, you're literally looking at worthless data. Like, you might have some leading indicators that if you're comparing it to other ads, then sure, there's some leading indicators there, but still you have to be careful because maybe your best ad performing has a little bit of delay in purchase because it's building brand and authenticity with your client, whatever it is, or your customers. So the point is, if you're measuring your marketing weekly, but your purchase cycle is 3 weeks, 4 weeks, you're completely cutting off your nose to spite your face. You think things aren't performing when they probably are, you're just not measuring it right. And we see this in an astronomical amount. We have to coach a lot of people on this because it's confusing. And one big thing that happened in the past year is this iOS change, where iOS stopped Facebook from tracking very well on their platform, on Apple. And so what that did was Facebook used to be able to track a 28-day click-through window. Now it only can track 7, and apparently it's not even that accurate. I don't have that validated, but I've heard that it's based on algorithm, not actual direct tracking, because they can't get the information. And so what that means is if your purchase cycle is 4 weeks and Facebook's telling you 1 week worth of data, it's telling you that your marketing's doing way worse than it actually is. And so we're seeing a lot of people say Facebook, quote unquote, isn't working for me. And what we're finding is it's actually, they're just measuring it wrong. People didn't stop buying on Facebook because Apple changed its policy. Like that, it just, again, going back to the logic of this. So that being said, understanding your purchase cycle and then how to accelerate it and how to increase your conversion rate. And ways to do this are email marketing, SMS, content. SMS and email are super powerful. Email has been around forever and has actually done it. It was about consistent up until the pandemic, meaning it had never declined. And in a decade, it had still been doing consistently just as good as it was. And when the pandemic hit, it increased actually quite a bit. So it's very powerful. SMS is about 10 times more effective than email on average, meaning higher 10 times the click-through rate, 10 times the conversion. So honestly, do both. Some people like to be hit one way or the other, but SMS and email are critical to driving good online business. And this works for B2B and B2C, just to be clear. And then the last piece, as I mentioned, is content. And content's a hard one because it doesn't show a direct ROI, but the idea of engaging your customer above and beyond a purchase decision so that they come back and they're compelled to check out your brand before and not just to buy something will inherently get them to come back more, which will inherently get them to buy more often and convert higher because they're engaging more, just in terms of in a game of numbers. Also, people are a lot more likely to share content than they are your product. So it will increase word of mouth as well. So content is a really powerful tool, just hard to measure directly. The last one, trust. Synonymous with brand. So trust, 75% of people, as it says here, will not buy from a company they don't inherently trust. What that means is early on, when you don't have a reputation, you don't have a brand, third-party validation is what building trust is all about. This could be PR and getting Forbes says I'm this, or Entrepreneur Magazine, or whatever that trusted partner could be. It also works for endorsement deals. It works with influencer marketing, testimonials, referrals, references, reviews, all these things where someone else is validating your product or service until you can build a brand. And what a brand is in terms of this definition is really what you deliver consistently. What is your company known for? How do they deliver it? And what is that experience? What is that personality behind your company? And so it can be good and bad, to be clear. You know, let's take McDonald's as an example. Everywhere you go in the world, and I've tried it a few times, I haven't had them forever actually, but McDonald's, like a Big Mac, pretty much tastes the same. Like some places they use a little different lettuce, but like you get a Big Mac, you get a Big Mac. So it's consistent. So if that's what I want, that's what I want. It's also known everywhere in the world as unhealthy. I believe that it pretty much is associated with the obesity epidemic in the United States, even though I haven't heard it talked about in a little while. This is what McDonald's built as a brand. Unhealthy, fast, but consistent. So if that's what you want, that's what you're going to get. Zappos, another great one, they really leaned into the brand of great customer service. And so by doing so, they were known for it and they delivered on it. And so this is one last little note on brand. A lot of it is also what you speak to, meaning it's not just how the experience is, but it's how you talk about it. Because and we've seen this a lot, and it's a little bit of an evil, it can be used for wrong, so to speak. So with great power comes great responsibility, but building a brand, if you talk about what you are and or what you're aspiring to be, people, if you do it over and over again, people will start to hear it and believe it unless you give them a reason not to. So if Zappos wrote the book Delivering Happiness because they want to stand for the best customer service, even though if they have decent customer service, but they talk about how that's their priority, people will be like, they're great because they're assuming it, then they deliver on it. Awesome. So a lot of it is also highlighting that. And that's building trust and consistency and building a brand. And Dollar Shave Club did a lot of this that, we always like to talk about, like, the nurturing and the merchandising. And something really important is whether it's getting someone on subscription or actually just having using all these tools to get them to come back and buy on their own, driving lifetime value is critical. So the two numbers that you should really worry about on the marketing side are your cost to acquire a customer, your CAC, and your lifetime value of a customer. How much do you make over the lifetime of that customer? Don't get too narrow focused on return on ad spend, on first purchase. Those are important numbers, obviously, for sustainability, but you really need to look at your business a little, from a bird's eye view. And with that, thank you. And books available everywhere, The Hawke Method. And if you guys, depending on who's here, we're also happy to always give a free marketing audit. It's just at hawkemedia.com. We do that. We're here for the long haul, so we're always happy to help brands figure out where they need to be running. And if we can help, great. And with that, I will open it up to questions.
Terrific. Thank you. Thank you, Eric. Very, very insightful. Best of luck with the book.
Thank you.
Congratulations on all your success. Hey, question just for me. You mentioned the venture fund.
Yeah.
On marketing tech. What kind of things have you been looking at?
Yeah. So we invested in one of the first SMS marketing platforms called Postscript. They are now the #1 platform partner to Shopify. That was a big move for us. Recently, so the things we've done recently are none of them are live yet. So we're just starting to get there. So other than Alloy is another great tool for data around e-commerce. We're looking at a lot of logistics and supply chain software right now because we obviously it's such a pain point and it hasn't been solved necessarily. And I'm diversifying your supply chain, those kind of things are super interesting. We are watching live shopping. It's not compelling enough yet. That doesn't mean it's not coming, but I'm also not convinced that it's not just an Asian phenomenon and it's something that the US won't care about. I'm not making that statement. I'm saying I'm not convinced either way. And we've seen that being too early is just as bad as being too late, if not worse. And so if there's not something catching fire already or something that we see compelling, we want to hold off. NFTs, I think we're looking at some plays there where how can they actually be utilized? And I'm not talking about the hype of buy the next NFT that goes from $5,000 to 500. I'm more talking about how can the technology be used for brands and for companies. So we're looking at that. We just closed our second fund, which is we've closed $25 of $50 million. So we've done 4 deals out of that fund so far, and we did 18 out of the first one.
I was quite struck on your nurturing comment when you said that, because it's the way I kind of feel as well. From day one, it's all about deepening that relationship, right out of the gate. And the fact that you tie it to sustainability for the long haul, I think that's a tremendous point for our audience to remember.
Yeah, no, that's super important. It's gotten way more expensive to acquire customers in the past 2 years because so many companies, digital was this nice open playground that the Fortune 500 weren't heavy in until the pandemic, and they went really heavy into it. And so it's driven up cost per impressions about 80%, significant climbs, which means it's just that much more expensive. So again, I talked about CAC and LTV. The ratio is what matters. So if your CAC goes up 80%, let's say it just your funnel's no better. So your CAC went up 80%. That just means that you have to now drive your lifetime value of a customer up 80% to have that same ratio, to have the same business, which comes from really good nurturing. It also comes from really good merchandising. A lot of companies I watch fail. Casper is a good example of this. I don't know that they're necessarily failed yet, but they're not doing great because you sell a mattress and then they had no really follow-on sales that were that catchy. Their second product was a dog bed. It's is that really where is that going to really drive your LTV up that much? You have all these people buying mattresses for their home and now dog bed. Even if everyone bought one, it wasn't that big of an increase. So you really need to think about how you build products and build a company around maximizing the share of wallet you get from your customers.
Yeah, because you certainly want them to come back. They want you to, you want that affinity,
Mhm.
really from the get-go. On
Yep.
the awareness point, you had on the slide that word of mouth is a must-have.
Yep.
Now, is that a traditional word of mouth or a social media word of mouth or a little bit of both?
All the above. I mean, so, there's what is it, the adoption curve that everybody talks about, early adopters, et cetera. And the early adopters are always willing to see an ad and go try something out that they haven't heard of. But most people purchase because someone else told them about something. Like that's just human behavior. So if you don't have a great way of driving word of mouth, then, it's something you should actually think about and focus on, because it's where the majority of your success will come in the long term. And it's also way more sustainable. You don't have to buy those customers. There's also something called a K factor or viral coefficient. For every customer you buy, so to speak, with advertising, how many do they bring with them? And so what can you do to juice that? Again, content's a great one. Also making it really easy for people to communicate your company. What's the value proposition? Like for us, we touted, we're your outsourced CMO. And so when I tell people what we do, we're an outsourced CMO and marketing team. Really easy to remember, really easy to tell other people, and word of mouth absolutely drives our business. So it's making it really easy, not 30 seconds, because it's not about you explaining to someone what you do. It's so that they can go tell other people what you do.
When you work with companies, just touch on last three of the tripod on the trust side.
Yeah.
When you're working with companies and maybe you're helping them design their investor relations page, their web pages, their marketing piece. Do you put your head down testimonials as an endorsements as an important component of trust? Do you leave spaces for that? Is that a send us a comment, or are you actually posting live comments from people?
And we constantly post comments from people. And so like even our own company, we constantly ask customers like, hey, when we're doing well, we go, hey, we've been doing well. If you don't mind, we'd love a Google review or, a nice comment. And, we've pretty big size company and we're still asking it's funny. We laugh because I think we have 60 reviews on Google and we've had 4,000 customers, just to give an idea of this ratio. And we are proactive about it, but we absolutely, when we get a good review, we then post it on social, we talk about it, it's public. And we promote it because it's third-party validation. I can tell you guys, I'm the best marketer on the planet. Nobody can beat us. We are absolutely number one. I guarantee 0 people in the audience believe me. I have to show some validator for that. Now, if someone with a decent brand goes, oh yeah, Erik's one of the best marketers out there, you got to talk to him, you probably will give it a shot. You'll believe it a lot more than me saying it myself. So that third-party thing, even if you don't know the company, says a lot, honestly.
When I worked at the New York Stock Exchange, one of the measures that we often tracked from an affinity standpoint, and how are we doing, how are we servicing the listed company, was if there was a transaction and say there was a spinoff, did we retain the spinoff, right? Or did they seek another market, right?
Exactly.
And in cases where it was a no-brainer, you always felt good. And the ones that sometimes you had to chase a little bit, it's like, wow, maybe we didn't know the decision makers as well as we could have,
Exactly.
that kind of.
For me, one of my validators too is I looked for some of the best marketers I knew in the industry and I tried to get them to hire us. And then I tried to see if we could service them and make them happy. And when we accomplished that, that was definitely a milestone. Like there was the guy that frankly opened me up to digital marketing. I'll say it, a guy named Chris Nella, that at the time when he taught me was running marketing for a company called Shoe Dazzle with Kim Kardashian. Okay. And this is 12 years ago, I think. And he really explained digital marketing to me in a lot of ways. He hired us now several times, but he hired us, I think, a couple of years into business, and we had a long relationship and it went really well. I was like, wow, so we've really built something that can work with some of the best. And that's another, like if you're B2B, it's a little harder with consumer. Like, I'm not sure, like if you're creating running shoes, I guess getting one of those, getting a marathon runner to, or champion to run in them, that's the same kind of benchmark. But that's a big one, because at the end of the day, having a great product or service makes all this marketing stuff easy. Having a terrible product or service makes all this marketing stuff impossible.
100%, 100%. All right, well, listen, Erik Huberman, founder, CEO of Hawke Media, the Hawke Method. Good luck with the book. Thank you for joining Leading Entrepreneurs of the World. Great conversation, great presentation. Really appreciate your contributions today.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Wishing you the best of luck in the future. Thank you.
As well.
Take good care.